Hi, Vidit. Absolute pleasure and a delight to be here today with you. Staying far away from India, but watching closely what is happening there. What I saw about your company and what I read about your company was nothing short of absolutely fantastic, which is not only on a tear at an unbelievable pace, but you're also creating a market, which is more exciting to me, frankly, because that's something where you're changing people's lives and you're doing something deeply purposeful. You're enabling the livelihood and better quality of people and better experience for both the sellers as well as the buyers, which is fantastic. Now, with that backdrop, and that gives you a reason why I'm here and wanting to have this chat with you. I just wanted to give a little bit of a context to our conversation, right? Where the way we do marketing today is going to be hopelessly useless tomorrow. You need to totally reimagine and reinvent marketing. Brands are going to play a dramatic role because the competing field is going to be totally leveled with the technology and with the data that is available. Between these two, the playing field is level, which means a small startup can actually give an absolute run for the money for the gigantic corporations, which may have deep pockets. The whole game is going to shift completely. And the challenge of building brands is going to be very different tomorrow. Now, when I look at one of the interesting aspects is there is something which is about growing the business, which is quite different than building a brand. And today our conversation is about building the brands and building brands that last, that endure, right? So from this perspective, you have succeeded extraordinarily in terms of your growth of the business, and you're growing, and I will not be surprised if you go to an IPO pretty soon and you might come up with the God knows $20 billion, $30 billion, whatever is the number that you fancy, I will still bet on you. The point is, how are you looking at brand? As I said, brand building and business building are two different things. One impacts the other significantly. So, and the brand Meesho, I think it's very attractive, very easy on the tongue, very easy to remember. All these good things are there. And I also actually did my homework. I saw your ads, which, by the way, you must compliment your marketing guys. They have done guys or girls, they have done a terrific job. So just let me start with that. But if you can share your perspective on brand building as you see, and a brand that will be enduring.
Yeah, thank you, Raja, first of all, for sharing all the things you did about our business and all the kind words that came along with it. Yeah, I think for the last few years, the business has been growing really well. As you saw, just in the last 6 months, we have tripled from a very large base, and we expect to kind of continue that momentum. And a lot of that, by the way, comes from the brand. I think for us, brand is a lot of things, but if I just kind of say it in few words, to us, it means building that strong relationship with our customers, building that trust that people come back to us for all the needs they have in their households. Right? For us, our aspiration is simple. We want to become the single e-commerce destination for the next billion consumers in the country. So we want to make sure that anything they want to buy for themselves across all possible categories, they should trust us with that particular need, come to us and buy. And I think the bar of building trust also changes quite a lot with businesses, right? Like there are a lot of products where people don't have to put in any money, right? Like, for example, a social media platform, the kind of bar you could have could be much lower as compared to in a business like ours, where people come and trust us with their money on the time and they come and transact with us. So the expectation of that trust is much, much higher because people are trusting us with their money. And because of that, I think we have kind of thought about this with every single touch point we have with the customers. So when you come to our app, what kind of things you see in the app, what kind of experience you get when you transact with us, what kind of experience when you get it from us, when you are, like, for example, getting the delivery from us, what kind of experience when you get post-delivery in terms of returns, etc. If you get to kind of speak to us when you call our support team, if you need some help and so on, like every single touch point you have with us gives us an opportunity to kind of build a brand with that particular customer, right? So we think of it very holistically rather than just like doing marketing or doing like ads, and that's not just brand to us. I think brand is every single touch point we have with the customer is an opportunity for us to kind of build that very strong relationship so that people keep coming back to us for every single need that they have. Right. So I think that's how we think about brand in our business. And it will just keep expanding from that core principle.
See, which is brilliant. And it is so mature in terms of the thinking and the thought process behind, right? If a brand is a sum total of every single experience that the consumer has in every which way, at every touch point, and something which embodies the value and the character of your company, that's absolutely fantastic. But as much as this is known in theory and understood as a philosophy, even large companies really struggle to embrace it fully. So, for example, even in large companies, and I refer to large companies because you would expect that their needs are a little different compared to startups, but even in large companies, which typically have a very good balance sheet and the cash flow is all pretty good, and they're not at such a massive growth rate that you have to keep on pouring money into various other business building activities to the same extent like a startup. Even in that kind of a situation, what happens is whenever there is a little bit of a crisis, whenever there is pressure on the margins, which will happen all the time, whenever there is a big infrastructural investment that the company has to make, they typically deprioritize marketing. Marketing investment is always sort of a last resort investment, so to speak, for many large companies. And I'm saying it with knowledge because I constantly interact with all my peers at the World Federation of Advertisers and the ANA, and I sit on both their boards. And we have heart-to-heart chat, and we say, this is one of the bane of our existence for large companies particularly. Now, if you transpose this problem to small companies and to startups, I would not say small, but I would say startup companies where your needs for investment are so intense, be it technology, infrastructure, capabilities building, hiring people, a distribution, all these good things. How do you balance your investment between marketing and the rest of the company?
Yeah, it's a very good question, by the way. And I'll add 2 points to it, right? So one is, I think technology has now solved a lot of problems that were sort of unsolved earlier. And what those problems are is, like earlier, branding was always considered something that you have to do. But if you ask people, can you attribute what are the benefits to the business from doing this brand investments? Most people won't have a good answer to it, right? So it was always thought of a thumb rule. Hey, invest X percentage of your revenue, X percentage of your top line into branding. Why? No one knows. Does it help you? No one knows. I think what has happened is because of technology, a lot of these problems are now solved. Like attribution, even if not 100% accurate, you can get to some answer with 80%, 75% accuracy. Like in our product now, with everything that we do around brand, we are able to attribute, does this help the business in some form? Like if we invest X amount of money in branding advertisements, does it grow our organic traffic on the app by X percentage? We are able to do it to some extent. If we invest in some sort of branding exercise around our delivery or our support center, how does that change retention onto the platform? We are able to do it to some extent. So my point is, we have, I think, ability to put some science behind branding is getting better and better. And that leads to the second point. So if you start to do some bit of attribution, it does not look like a cost anymore to the business. It starts to look like an investment. So, hey, we invested X amount of money and Y is the ROI we got. And once you know this, we also kind of have very strong governance mechanisms within the company where we're able to say, hey, this is the investment we did, and this is the ROI in terms of increased LTV from the customer, and hence this is justified. And once you are able to kind of create some kind of return on investment model around branding, I feel some of these conversations go away. Like no one is saying, hey, next quarter, let's not do this because something else is important. You're doing it because you're getting ROI in the business, right? Like, and this ROI is higher than some of the other things we can do in the business. So I think that's what we have done. We have tried to put as much science as we can behind this. And I think now it's possible because of technology. There's so much measurement available around everything that you do. You can check every single investment that you do. How does that translate into ROI? And because of that, we are able to have a conversation inside the company saying, branding is an investment rather than a cost to the business.
For a lifetime marketer, hearing that from a massively successful startup CEO is nothing short of music to my ears, right? As I said, many of the companies, they always look at marketing as something which is not marketing as in performance marketing. I'll just come to that in a bit. But when you look at brand building, everyone knows philosophically, yeah, it's very good for a company and that's very important, etc. But when the rubber hits the road, when you have to put your money where your mouth is, always it goes somewhere else. And that has been the bane of existence for the craft of marketing. So it's a delight to hear what you are saying. And you're absolutely right. The technology and the data capabilities have so dramatically increased that you can measure the return on investment or ROI in actually real time, if pretty much so, if not maybe near real time in some markets. And on the other hand, my question to you would be, when you look at marketing investment, there is one where you have got a direct cause and effect relationship that you can measure on the fly. An example, if this is performance marketing, okay, I'm putting so much behind acquisition campaign, what are we getting? I'm putting a retention campaign or my usage campaign or whatever will be the campaigns. It's easy to measure. The effect of brand strength, which actually takes time to build, equity of the brand, the image of the brand, the characterization of the brand, it takes consistent investment over the years, which builds that kind of a robust brand, which then differentiates the brand, differentiates the company and its products in a highly, highly effective fashion, particularly when the competition is brutal and the price pressure is intense. So the key thing is performance marketing, many of the CEOs are very comfortable. Now, as the CEO, in your case, while performance marketing is not necessarily totally mutually exclusive to branding, do you actually think of investing specifically for brand building because this is good for your company in the years to come?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And by the way, I think we've had some of these discussions in the company in the early days. To be very frank, for the first few years, when you have very limited money, you just invest only in performance marketing because the attribution is almost 100% correct, right? Whereas, as you said in brand building, and I was referring to that saying, accuracy of attribution would never be more than like 75, 80%, and that's okay. But now I think we don't think of performance and branding as two different channels, by the way. I think we have evolved to a point where we say that all of them combined together become more powerful as compared to using one or the other. Like if you're able to invest right towards branding, the amount of top of the funnel you can open up that you can reach out to eventually through performance marketing is massive. Like sometimes we just keep doing performance marketing and a customer who does not know about the brand looks at this ad like 10 times a day, but does not trust that brand because, hey, we haven't just spent enough around building the narrative. Sometimes people just won't click on the ad. But if you start to invest towards like brand building, you start to see your performance campaigns start to become better, right? So we always see this as a combined funnel, like integrated with each other. And if you use that together, the results are much, much more powerful as compared to using one or the other. So that's why I think those conversations around thinking A or B are gone now. I don't think we think like that. We think about how do we use A and B together to kind of create a very, very strong growth driver for the business. And we have seen the impact of some of these things in big ways. And I think that's why we are such strong believers. And sometimes people who haven't seen that are not, but we have seen that to be a big case. Like for a long time, when we were not investing in brand building, we used to see that our performance campaigns used to have a very strong target, like very small target audience, not a very large one. But we've been able to expand that after we started to invest very aggressively towards brand building.
Got it. Let's switch the gears a little bit, right? And again, when I was doing some research on your company before our call, few things caught my eye. And I said, wow, these guys know their stuff. Cool. Firstly, your app is only 12 MB. And that your app can work on low-end devices and in low bandwidth situations. Essentially, I think what an amazing combination of these three it is to be able to reach those audiences and make your product, make your app, make your service accessible to all these people. I was blown away. And Also because 40% of your new users are first-time users, simplicity of experience is very critical. Now, I could not test your app, I must confess, but whatever I read, it felt, and you cannot have 40% of your new users or first-time users of e-commerce unless your experience is seamless, smooth, and simple. And they always say that what appears so simple and elegant upfront is so complex and, and incredibly sophisticated on the back end. So my question to you is, as much of focus as you're putting in behind technology and leveraging it across all these areas, how are you looking at beyond calculating LTVs, lifetime values, or ROIs for your investment? How are you deploying technology in marketing?
Apart from this, I think a lot of work that we have done since the early days, I would say, is internally we use the word virality, right? And I think we have done a lot of investments, especially around technology, looking at how do we make our product more viral. And the reason I'm talking about this is the kind of customers we serve. A lot of these people come from lower income segments, right? Like whatever you do, the LTV sometimes could be limited in the kind of categories you're operating in. So you have to figure out a way to basically access them without spending a lot of money, right? So I think since the early days, we invested a lot in how do we increase the virality of the product? How do we make sure that the product goes from one customer to the other, like very naturally? People do it at different points in time. I think we did a lot of investments around technology, especially in making our app more viral. And that's where leveraging WhatsApp came into being. That's where creating like beautiful nudges at different points in the app so that people refer their friends, family, everyone became very natural. And I think we have done some hundreds of A/B experiments to kind of come at some of these products. But I would say increasing virality, again, that's a very unique thing about technology. I don't think businesses 15 years ago could drive as much virality as you can when you are leveraging social media, you're leveraging some of these things. I would say this is one. Second, a lot of investments in technology have happened, especially around understanding customer needs. And I think the question that you were trying to get to is, like, how do we build such a simple interface for our customer, right? Like for a customer that is so new to e-commerce, like they haven't seen anything before. I think we have done a lot of investments around how do we stay in touch with our customers very often, understand their needs. Everything that we do is customer first rather than what we have built. Like sometimes you have a propensity to show what you have built, put the complexity in front of the customer, saying, hey, we have hundreds of options to you. The kind of customer we serve wants very simple things because they're anyways new to online, new to e-commerce. So they are overwhelmed as soon as you show them 10 options. They don't want 10 options.
Absolutely.
They want a very simple path to getting to what they want. How do you kind of build that out? And that happens when you start to understand your customer better than anyone else.
Looking at another angle of a company, obviously we all say that people are at the center of making a company successful, right? And technology and all these are enablers, but it is people who eventually make it happen. When the pandemic has started and when people were feeling very insecure, fearful, not able to go to work, not knowing whether their jobs will remain or not remain, and so on, now I felt so thrilled, at Mastercard that Ajay Banga, who was then our CEO, has gone on the website for the company, webcast for the company, and said, I know you're all feeling insecure. I know you're all feeling fearful that you may lose your job, but let me assure you, relax. Nobody is going to lose their jobs this year because of pandemic. This was last year. The kind of change it brought about in people's attitude and feeling of reassurance and the commitment to the company, it just went up a few notches. And we implemented a whole bunch of things like insurance coverage for the pets, like pets are literally part of your family, or going into paternity leave in addition to maternity leave, etc. So when I was reading about your company, again, I said, for a large company like Mastercard, it's fine to do this. For a startup company like yours, you have gone and said you've got a gender neutral policy of giving vacation, or not vacation, but leave of 6 months or so after the childbirth, both for the father or the mother. You don't care, you just give because they're needed, both are needed, which is incredibly powerful. Secondly, also, There was one company, I think it's either Patagonia or REI. In the US, they said the day after Thanksgiving, which is called here in the US as Black Friday, they said everyone goes shopping and all that, and all the shops are kept open. It said on that day, we're going to close our shop. You go and you enjoy your lives. It really made waves. And here you are, you're giving actually 10 days time for your employees after a busy season to say, guys, go and reset yourselves, re-energize yourselves and come back to work. What an awesome. I mean, there are so many things that are actually jumping out at me. And I say, no, probably you're very undervalued at $4.9 billion. For the philosophy that you're bringing it to life and walking the talk. Just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. And I think the core of everything that we have done around people comes from a very strong belief. And that belief is that we are here where we are today because of all the people we have in the company, right? And I think we will get to where we want to be also because of the kind of people we have in the company. I think one of the most important priorities for both me and my co-founders since the early days has been around how do we hire and grow the most exceptional talent? And you can't do that without building a very people-centric workplace. So we just have been aware of the needs. And by the way, all of this we have learned. I still feel like we launched the gender neutral leave now, but still 5 years late. Like, why didn't we do it like 5 years ago when we started the company? We could have, right? But I think a lot of that has come by looking at the needs of people. Like we saw some people come up to us and say, hey, I want to do it. And why don't we do it? Like, why does a lot of other companies have conventional policy that doesn't allow this? And when people start to question, we go back and we say, yeah, it doesn't make sense, right? And the same thing happens around the 10-day leave. A lot of our people, especially in the last 2-3 months, just before Diwali, work most weekends. And we say like all of these folks are working most weekend because there's a lot of work. This is the biggest festive season for all of us. Then why are we not giving them this time back? So we said, let's just create this 10-day leave to make sure that you rejuvenate because it's worth it, right? Like everyone should do it.
Yes.
And people loved it. Like it was like to us, it was so obvious that people should do it, but just because no one else does it, no one else did it. So we did it. It doesn't matter to us because our goal is how do we build a very, very people-centric workplace? And I think a lot of that comes back to us. Like people love it. They tell their friends, as you said, like brand is not just in your business. Brand is around how do you treat your people? What do you think of this? Like, do you think of them as resources to get some work done? Or do you kind of think of them as people who are essentially growing this organization? They evolve, the organization evolves with them.
And also I came across in the last few months a new emerging terminology in India. And this is the last but one question that I have for you, which is there seems to be something which is India, which is more urban. And then you have got Bharat, which seems to be tier 2 and then below. When you're looking at building a brand, it is again not either or. But at the same time, if you try to optimize across, you might end up with the least common denominator as opposed to the highest common multiple. And particularly when you're trying to scale, how are you, firstly, are you focused on, I'm assuming the answer is no, which is, are you focusing on only on tier 2 and below? Because that's where the maximum growth potential is. And if not, how are you making sure that you're equally addressing the entire Bharat, not just the tier 2 and etc., nor are you getting alienating the rest of the world or rest of the country by just focusing on the urban? A couple of thoughts on it will be great to get your perspective.
Yeah, and I think you already answered that question to some extent, right? Like if you are building a very, very mass brand like us, which is we want to go after 1 billion people, not 5 million, 10 million, 50 million, but we want to make sure like 1 billion people in the country are using our product. You have to go for the lowest common denominator. Like what is that simple underlying thing that all of the people here want? And I think that's what we have done. As I said, you want to make sure that you come and you find what do people want when they go to an e-commerce destination? They want to buy everything that they want or need in their household at the best possible prices. All right. So just making the value proposition extremely simple, which is you can come here, find all the selection you want at the lowest possible prices and in the simplest possible way. Like just maintaining that ethos. It could mean different things in different parts of the world or different parts of the country, but just making sure that lowest common denominator stays. I think that's what we have done. We did not complicate it. We did not say 10 things. We just said, wherever you are, we'll have everything that you need at the lowest possible prices and in an interface which is the simplest to understand. And that's the only way you can scale to like 5 million monthly transacting users to like some 18 million monthly transacting users in 6 months. I think that's the only way.
What does it take to build brands in your mind that are endearing and enduring?
Yeah, and I think it's extremely hard to build very enduring brands, right? Because brand to me is very, very closely connected to building trust with someone, right? Like the strongest bond you can build with someone, and you have to build that bond with millions and millions of people. To me, like building an enduring brand is every single time you interact with your customer feeling that you have to earn that trust again. And next time someone comes to you, then how do you again earn that trust again? And you have to keep doing it again and again for not months, for not days, but for years and years and years. And I think that's how an enduring brand is built. Never taking your customer for granted, which we see like a lot of legacy products that we see, like we start to feel that someone takes you for granted, and that's when disruption happens. To me, for building a very, very enduring brand, is as a brand, we should always keep working towards earning that customer's trust in every single interaction, every single time. And you do that for years, then you have a chance of building an enduring brand.
Very, very well said. And in fact, when I look at brand building, which is what I try to think about all the time, there is a distinction between building a brand and sustaining a brand, right? Sustaining a strong legacy brand. So when you build over years, it becomes a legacy brand. How do you sustain it? How do you make sure? So on the second part of it, which is sustaining the brand, I would always say that this is a brand that is adaptive, that adjusts constantly. To your point, every interaction you're getting the trust, establishing the trust, and reinforcing the trust. And that's one kind of a thing. The second thing is in terms of to make sure that there is consistency. Many brands can lose their way with some shiny new pennies and toys. Say, oh, this seems to be good, so let's go there, let's do this, etc. But having that single-minded focus, you need to have your North Star. You know where you're headed as a brand, staying course and making sure there are no distractions. Yet you're not so rigid that if there is a waterfall in front of you, you just don't keep marching straight, but you find a way around it and then go, but still have your eyes firmly on the North Star. I think these are some of the attributes which some companies have demonstrated brilliantly, and I admire those brands. And but here is wishing you all the very best to build a most enduring brand in Meesho. And when you come to the US, I would love to actually use that product. If you bring it to the US, that's where I live. And certainly if I come to India or you come to the US, would love to catch up with you in person and to deep dive into something which are not confidential aspects of your business to learn more. But with it, absolute pleasure talking to you. Great thought. Feel very, very proud of what you're accomplishing. Good luck and Godspeed. Keep going.
Thank you so much, Raja. I enjoyed the chat very much. Thank you.